My initial reason for entering into the left-hand path specifically and pursuing that as my course of study and practice was due to a sense of lost power in my early life and a feeling of having to overcompensate for that. I think that tends to be the case for a lot of people who specifically get into black magic. I used to say all because from my experience, just about everybody I came in contact with who were on the path of the left hand and pursuing diabolism, Satanism, and anything that's to that extent of darkness had that similar loss of power that they had to try to turn over on itself and to compensate for. And most people, I think, will come and go from that, and by the time their adolescent angst is worn off, or by the time they've been able to repair their psyches, that they move on to other things, whether it's lighter forms of magic, or for most people, they just go back to the religions of their parents or their upbringing, or nothing at all. But the black magic phase is just a phase. While I was in this, as I was working through all of these black magic systems, in order to try to find power that would liberate me really from myself and from my own entrapments in my psyche, I started finding that there's a lot more to it. That there was a system, a common current, a common thread in all of them, and there were very rich, not only mythologies that get completely overlooked, because I think when most people look at the left-hand path, they do have that instant equation with Satanism, with a very restricted, limited paradigm, and say, well, obviously the mythology is just the inverse of the Judeo-Christian paradigm. But the more I got into it, the more I realized, well, that's not the case at all. In fact, that these black magical operations and mythologies go back much further than Judaism by far, and often are much more intricate. But also that there was there were keys to power that were being given in specifically black magic that I think you can't find in a lot of other places, and not because they don't have the information, but because they restrict themselves in how they use it. And so that was the great, I think, liberating force for me with the left-hand path was to realize, well, that you have all this power and access to all of it, and you can do whatever you want with it. Pretty quickly, getting revenge against your enemies and doing love spells and that kind of stuff gets old really fast. Once you realize that it's just within a couple minutes ritual, and you can have most of what you want. And so that's when I started really looking more, I think, deeply into a lot of these systems to see what they really had to offer. Of course, the first place that I went to really try to get real information on this was, I think, at the time, the most popular of the left-hand path currents, and that's the Church of Satan. So I start corresponding with Herr Vad, who at the time was the outer representative for the Church of Satan out of Germany. And so I just get an email address, start emailing back and forth, asking him about these keys to power, asking him about how to actually dive into this and tap into it. And after a few emails back and forth, he said, the Church of Satan is not what you're looking for. You're looking for something a bit more traditional, a bit more intense, and a bit more magical, really, because the Church of Satan is more of a humanist type of approach, more of a existential here and now, and eat, drink, and be merry. And I was looking for something much more. And so he passed me some manuscripts for the Order of Nine Angles. And at that time, this was in 1996 or 7. The ONA wasn't known about too much. It was kind of a whispered rumor in most circles. Whereas at this point, not so much. Most people in the left-hand path have come across the system, some of the manuscripts. Now, as I started reading through these, I noticed, first of all, it's the Order of Nine Angles is what you call a traditional satanic order. in that they revere dark gods, these acausal entities that are beyond formed existence. Basically, the entities that exist in a part of creation that's actually outside of creation. It's untouched by divine providence, and so this is what they revere, and this is what they invoke in their rites. They do this through general ritual, personal rituals to invoke this, but then they also have their group ceremonies and celebrations and rites that involve orgy, human sacrifice, blood sacrifice, bloodletting, and aeonic culling where they'll actually focus their attention towards political or religious leaders and try to take them out magically. And so, what's not to love about a group like this? So I start investing myself pretty heavily in reading their manuscripts and then practicing from that, initiating myself through their path workings. A few of the things that I found that they really excelled at being able to bring to the forefront, one of them is pushing yourselves to extremes. So they'll go through things, especially in the early initiations, of pushing yourself physically and psychologically beyond all of your limitations, and you'll do so, by doing hikes, intense hikes that you're relying on nothing but what you can pack in your backpack, and I've got a friend who now is working through some of these first initiations, and so he's going to go do an Appalachian hike, which is tremendously difficult. So he's exploring, as he's getting ready for this, the intensity that you have to push your body through, and more than your body, your mind as well. They'll do this through what they call insight roles as well, where they'll put themselves in situations that they normally wouldn't enter into. So if they naturally are tending more towards pacifism and kind of a Unitarian philosophy, then they'll be encouraged to go join the military. If they're a more violent, aggressive person, they'll be encouraged to join a monastery. This is learning through dialectics, which is basically you put the two extreme opposites in front of you, experience both of them, and then you'll find in the middle ground where you really belong. But you can't do that until you've experienced the extremes. They also will push their reality to the two extremes, and this will happen in first there, and you do always want to, as you're doing any of these pushing of anything, you always want to start from the core center, being yourself, and move outwards. And so you'll start pushing your family life to extremes in developing it in a very intentional way, for very intentional purposes, and then further out there from your local community into your you do state level, national, and then global, and so they'll make these effects through physical means as well as magical. So magical, obviously, they'll start doing rituals to try to affect these massive changes that they're looking for. Physically is where they really get into some issues because they do promote things like terrorism to get their point across and to make the changes. Oh, yes.
Okay, look, I've got to stop you here. Do you want me to interrupt you?
Yeah, you are, but that's okay.
I've got some huge problems with some of the things.
As do I.
Terrorism. They're, human sacrifice, taking out political leaders. I'm really not okay with these things.
Nor should you be. Nor should.
Human sacrifice, like.
Oh, like they in their manuscripts have very clear instructions on how to abduct and tie somebody to your altar and stab them. Yes, most definitely. Yes, this is really some. This is some dark stuff, and you should be appalled. You should be appalled.
Quite appalled.
Yeah, and it's excellent that you're so appalled that you want to interrupt and say something about it, because
I have to.
yeah, well, most definitely, and I mean, I normally I wouldn't feel like I should even have to say this, but I do have to say it, that these are not precepts that I support by any measure. These are precepts that I just wanted to lay out as far as what I started learning from them. Mm-hmm. A big part of what I've noticed with my work is I'll look through thousands of words of complete bullshit in order to get that one word that might be worthwhile. And this is with any system. This is looking into to any path out there is going to be 99% crap, 99% dogma and really misdirection. The remaining is gold in any path, and so you look at this, the fact that in their manuscripts they are pushing for human sacrifice. I would venture to say that not many people who actually follow the tenets of the Order of Nine Angles have ever performed a human sacrifice, magical or otherwise. That there are few people that are willing to push themselves as far as the founders of the ONA say that they should. And I would probably even go a bit further by saying that I know for a fact that members or people who helped found, set up, and spread the Order of Nine Angles, they haven't pushed themselves to those extremes either. That they put this up as an extreme. This is the intensity that you can go to. And it's through that dialectic, through even just presenting the possibility of somebody performing a human sacrifice, is that extreme has gotten you to realize at a very clear, fundamental level, that is not a path for spiritual liberation.
Certainly not for me.
No, exactly. And so by that dialectic, you therefore have reached the goal that they're trying to get to. One of the things that I've noticed is that in my own personal initiations into a lot of these paths is what I've always called the test of Abraham. How far are you willing to go, and at what point do you pull yourself back and assert your own autonomy? And say, you don't necessarily have to. I don't know that you would have to wait for an angel to come to you and tell you not to slay your own son on an altar to Jehovah. There's a sense when you reach that point, that critical mass, that the real core person comes alive and goes, no, this is not, or doesn't. Mm-hmm. And in the cases that it doesn't, well, you failed the initiation. Or, and that'll be up for debate, because those who do follow or adhere to the Order of Nine Angles philosophy would most definitely say that is part of the initiation, and part of the growth is to actually perform these sacrifices. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have a hard time grokking that, really. Just a hard time grabbing onto that and saying, well, yeah, of course it's got to be necessary to slaughter another human being for your spiritual liberation. It's interesting, but to present the very idea, and right now, like, once again, just by mentioning it, you had a gut reaction that you just could not tolerate.
Absolutely not.
Now, some people maybe need more impetus than that to get to their core selves, that they need more of a push. They need to be at that critical juncture in order to get to the realization of whether or not that is their path.
Well, it raises a very interesting. I hope you don't mind that this is a bit of a dialectic, because there are certain things that for right-hand path audience obviously need to be challenged. The very fact of your being here, a self-proclaimed black magician, raises a whole question of magical ethics. And we've been having a very interesting discussion on the Facebook group for the last couple of months about what is black magic, what is white magic, and is there any sort of absolute, or is everything relative? And we've gone into a whole lot of realms of epistemology with this, and applied epistemology, and questions of magical ethics. And it seems to me that in the end, it does come down to a question of magical ethics, and rather than a simple black-white paradigm. But certainly, from my perspective, from my ethical perspective, any sort of human sacrifice is certainly unethical.
Yeah, and the way you phrased that according to your ethics. So in that way, our ethics are relative. I mean, are we looking at a relativistic universe where if I choose, or for whatever reason I am geared in a way that makes that not only good but essential to perform human sacrifice in order to attain whatever I'm trying to attain. For me being good, is that enough? Or does it need to be universally good? And who decides that?
Well, I'm not I'm not an epistemologist. I'm not a moral philosopher, but that's not my background. But I'm also not a complete relativist either. I don't believe that magic or that anything that everything is just a question of our own personal preferences or our own personal ethics. But I do think that there are certain things that we can agree on that in an absolute sense are also either wrong or right. Or I don't think that there would be, look, if someone were to come in this room right now with a submachine gun and shoot Luke, I don't think that there's a person in this room that any of us would think that that was a good thing.
But we can go to Pakistan and go in with submachine guns and shoot a fellow who is our enemy.
No one in America gives a shit.
Boom. So it is relative. Not that nobody gives a shit, because it looks like you might. But
we, I didn't pay taxes that year.
Well, you wind up in a morass of nihilism if you throw everything out the window. It's a very complicated question.
Do you mind if I ask you something, David?
Sure.
Well, but you're working in Egyptian symbol, and the whole Egyptian culture is built by slaves, who they tortured and murdered.
Mm-hmm. I also think that slavery is unethical.
Yeah, but people who created the system you are working did murder and have slaves.
Okay, well that doesn't mean that, okay, that is a bit of a misdirection from the central question. We're talking about whether there is any sort of ethics that in any sort of an absolute sense, and whether everything is just simply relative. Personally, I don't ascribe to an absolute relativity in ethics. I do believe that there is some absolute moral right and wrong, but that it may be difficult to perceive because of problems like the difficulty in evaluating what's objective reality and what's subjective reality. Kant talked a lot about this. I don't want to get into a long epistemological discussion because I'll totally derail your lecture, but I do believe that that ethics are important, and we don't necessarily need to get lost in a discussion of moral relativism versus moral absolutism to come to an agreement that magical ethics are important. And I don't think that there's a person in this room that would be okay with human sacrifice as part of magical ethics.
A lot of that has to do
For me, I know, you know that I come from a total different background. If I would see someone raping my little sister, I would stab him in the fucking throat without hesitating.
That's different.
is that?
To me, it is.
Now with the to go on that point, with the Order of Nine Angles specifically, that when they don't willy-nilly just go dust somebody off the streets and stab them, that they actually have a testing process, that you will nominate your sacrifice based on something that they have done that is either attacking the Order directly or that's moving humanity away from progression, as they might define it, which might be a different definition than others might define it. And so they'll go through a whole vetting of this person as well as a continuing of testing them to see whether or not they can redeem themselves in the eyes of the Order. Of course, that's making them the final arbiter.
It's God, basically.
Yeah, which is what the heads of every order does. That they become the gods of what they consider to be true and right and welcome, and that's part of it. I mean, that's really part and parcel to acknowledging somebody else, another human, as your spiritual authority rather than the divine itself. But then, if you recognize the divine itself as your only authority, you're walking on shaky ground of becoming one of the crazies yourself.
Right.
So
But when you look at a leader of an order, you and the leader of the order is your spiritual guide and teacher, but I don't think that's the same as like you still have the spirit, the cosmic as your guide, as what you know. It's still a higher.
Right, it's not as bad as like the Catholic Church per se, where you've got to go through the priest in order to get absolution, but there is still, it's always shaky ground to put, and this is probably a very black magical statement, to put any other human being above yourself as far as the authority that dictates how you act and what you do.
Yes, sir. I have a question. Is it kind of like certain people want to be a sacrifice, because I don't believe anything happens by chance, but it seems like some paths aspire to self-sacrifice, and some paths aspire to being the sword. So without one or the other, then there would be no balance. So it's kind of like the whole Cain. Aleister Crowley talked about the whole Cain and Abel, where Hermetics itself came from Cain's sacrifice, from sacrificing his own brother.
Huh. Yeah, so Crowley's asserting that all of Hermetics has derived from human sacrifice. That's an interesting idea on its own, for sure. And yeah, that they basically will look at the individual that's being nominated for sacrifice, and determine whether or not their continued actions, being tested directly, are begging for that person to be sacrificed. Now, on the other hand, also, and this is something I'm going to bring up here in a minute in a bit more detail. The Order of Nine Angles does perform every I believe it's 17 years, does perform a human sacrifice. It's absolutely necessary for the order to exist, to perform one human sacrifice every 17 years for each cell within the ONA, and that is usually a voluntary sacrifice of somebody among the order. So let me get your take on that then, David. If it is a person who is volunteered to do that because they're sacrificing themselves for some greater good, whether or not that good is really good, is that?
I'm sorry, I can't support that in any way at all. Bear in mind also that that our tradition is also Isinian. And Isis in ancient Egypt, also you don't know this, Adam, but Isis in ancient Egypt, it was Isis who abolished human sacrifice in ancient Egypt.
Also, you're against suicide? Do you agree with that suicide is illegal? Do you think that's right? I think people, if someone wants someone else to kill them, I would definitely support that.
Oh, you're saying like suicide is
Euthanasia, this
different
sort of thing.
than
Anyway, this is a whole different question.
No, because he was saying if someone volunteered that they wanted to be killed, then I think that's a different story. Not that I say that I think it's right killing someone, but same thing as if I had my grandmother on life support and she really wanted to die, I would be all for helping her.
It's a suicide. May I please?
Yes, please.
As the cultural anthropologist in the room, I would like to point out that in ethnography, we are actually taught how to be pure observers. And as a pure observer, what is occurring in the culture is what is occurring in the culture. We are to pass no judgments whatsoever on what we see, as each culture is different and handles things differently. Now, one culture in particular in South America that I do have some good knowledge of due to some anthropological friends of mine who did field work there. If a woman misbehaves in that culture, the standard punishment is gang rape. Now, my friend Carol, being a raging feminist, had a problem with that. But because she was in the capacity of a cultural anthropologist, she did not step in at all. She passed no judgment in her professional capacity as an ethnographer. And I think that many times what happens is that we forget that as Westerners, we have a specific cultural identity to which we adhere that has certain taken for granted ideas, ideals, and taboos that may not necessarily be a part of a magical system that we are observing from the outside. Should we choose to be participant observers, that perspective necessarily changes. Should we choose to move from the perspective of participant observer to full participant, or as an anthropological terminology, if we go native, then of course things will change. But with the idea of going native, You don't go into the culture with an idea to change it. You go into the culture with an idea to be a participant in it. And so what I'm giving you are not opinions of mine. What I'm giving you are the rules of the discipline in which I was trained. And so I want to, give you some food for thought. And where do you stand? Are you a participant? Are you a participant observer? Or are you a pure observer? What is it that you're looking at, and how do you choose to interact with it? This is pure relativism, and it does exist, and it is a very useful tool. You just have to decide where you want to be on that participant-observer dichotomy.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. And that is, I think, the point of a lot of what systems like the Order of Nine Angles are doing is through that process of internal dialectics, finding out if you want to participate, or if you don't, or if you want to stand against. And all paths are equally valid, really. And that could be argued as well. But
Yes.
Oh, so I'm sorry if this isn't on point, just skip it. That's fine. But so I was understanding you to be saying that what you were taking from the Order of the Nine Angles was that they help to push people to the extreme to the point where they're some sort of primal self makes itself apparent.
that's definitely a part of it, where their system is aimed at allowing the person direct conscious access into the reptilian brain. That they're getting get to the absolute core with all I think what you could say false morality stripped away, and by false I mean programmed. That each individual needs to discover for their own selves how far they want to go, and if it's necessary and if it's helpful. But that in order to make that decision, that they may need to go to those extremes. And once again, with that dialectics, when they go to those two extremes, that you're always going to find that your path is never on one end or the other, that it's pretty much square in the middle. At least I think that's where most people should end up, is somewhere in the middle, because those extreme ends I don't think are authentic or sustainable.
I think that sounds a lot really native.
What's that?
It sounds a lot like native cultures to really push yourself to the extreme.
Oh,
Go through it through pain and exhaustion and
Like a vision quest?
yeah, exactly. It sounds very, very old.
Well, it is, and from my understanding, at least a few of the founders of the ONA did indeed have a more naturally based form of witchcraft that they came from, that didn't involve intricate ceremony or really a lot of the stuff that they kind of have inserted into the order, but was a pretty natural connection with a greater power that they were able to connect with. So yeah, no, there is that. I think you'll definitely see that. They do take it to an extreme, especially with how they present it. That does create that gut reaction.
Well, if you look like at the American natives, where they pierce themselves hanging in their nipples and in sweat lodges and things like that. That's all. It sounds pretty kind of similar.
Yeah, definitely going to those extremes in order to achieve that self-discovery.
Well, I think that in a way the whole question of moral relativism versus moral absolutism is in a way unnecessary, at least for the purposes of our discussion, because we both agree, and I assume that everyone in the room agrees, that human sacrifice is not an ethical, magical behavior that is acceptable to any of us. So therefore, it's in a way a moot point to the discussion, whether or not the Order of Nine Angles includes it or not. It's one of the things that you disagree with them about it.
Yes, yeah, no, most definitely. But their purpose in doing a lot of what they're doing, at least their stated purpose, is to force the evolution of the human species. That they're first pushing themselves to extremes. They're second pushing the world around them in the immediate present to extremes, and then lastly they're pushing the species to extremes. Now the extreme that they see for the human race is that we would become an interstellar galactic satanic order, that we would be traveling the stars, and their point is, or the reason is that this planet has offered us all of the adversity that it can offer, and we've won. We're still here, we thrive, and we've evolved to the limit that this planet will allow. And so to continue our evolution, we need to go to other planets and encounter other forms of adversity, other challenges that we can rise to meet. And so their work, supposedly, and at this point, I should mention that most of the founding members of the Order of Nine Angles have gone on to other things. They've gone into other religions, other paths, that even for the people who founded this system, they didn't want to adhere to it to the end. So that tells you something about the system itself. So there's obviously a lot of flaws with this whole system, and this is why I'm not here as a representative for the ONA. I'm here as just E.A.Koetting, because there are so many flaws that it's hard to, not only hard to stomach it on an emotional level, because I think that our decisions need to be based on much more insight than just that gut reaction. But the dots just don't connect in a way that they should for a system that is going to propel you as an individual and us as a species into the next level of our own unfolding. You know, one of the flaws is most definitely pushing oneself to physical extremes while ignoring the other extremes that exist. For instance, when I get into a ritualized state, when I get into what I've termed the theta gamma sync, so you're dropping your brainwave states very low in order to trigger other brain waves that are on the gamma range far above what the human brain is capable of in conscious activity, and tethering that there, it is a traumatic experience almost every time that I come away from it shaken, and that's the I think purpose of any kind of post-ritual grounding is because it's traumatic, because it shakes you. It changes you in a fundamental way, and that is indeed the greatest power of magic, is that it's not what you're doing in the 30-minute ritual, but it's how that ritual has altered you as an individual, and then you take that new energy and new focus, and that is actually what lays out reality before you and changes it in collusion with your intention. Another issue that they definitely have is that they had a gentleman get into their highest leadership named David Myatt, who was a professed National Socialist, basically a Nazi, and he started using the Order of Nine Angles as a platform for his National Socialism. That got to be a major issue, especially, I mean, for me, it just did not add up to, once again, to any kind of enlightened or evolved human consciousness. That if you have that if you have access to real power and real knowledge, that you'll never feel the need to usurp that from anybody else for any reason at all. And that gets back into the human sacrifice issue.
Well, also at a political level, it runs absolutely counter to everything that I believe in. I mean, the fact that you're here today is because also in a spiritual sense I have quite libertarian views, in the sense that I believe very much in personal freedom and non-sectarianism and ecumenical approach even to magic. That, you know, that all different traditions, whether we agree with them or not, at least deserve to have a seat at the table, and that we don't have to be completely segregated and have some sort of magical apartheid merely because I don't necessarily agree with the sort of magic that you use, or I don't agree with all of your philosophical positions. It makes no sense to me. You know, I know there are a lot of people, both left-hand path and right-hand path, that have criticized that position over the past week. But do I understand correctly that you also take issue with this sort of aspect of the ONA, their National Socialism? Where do you stand?
First, my political views are libertarian, leaning towards anarcho-capitalist. I believe very, very strongly in the individual. And that even comes to another issue that I have with the ONA, is they have an extreme focus on elitism, and this elitism, there's always, anytime you get into a sense of elitism, it's always compensatory. If somebody, I know a lot of people who are expert martial artists, and one guy that I spent some time with last week could easily kill a person with his hands within a few seconds. He doesn't remember the last time he got in a fight. He doesn't pick fights. He's a nice guy. You kind of get into the sense that the people with the most power use it the least, or feel the need to demonstrate it the least, for sure. And so anybody who claiming elitism probably is not all that great. They're probably not all that accomplished. And I think when you start looking into the people who claim that they're elite, that they're better than you, look a little closer, and you're going to find almost every time that they themselves have some serious issues that they could deal with. So, and that does tie into the National Socialists, because that was a big theme of National Socialism, is we've got this class, this rank, and then everything flows down from there. Well, maybe not so. So yeah, that's what I definitely take issue with National Socialism, but I take issue with most established governments, anyways. So the linking of it doesn't seem like if we were going to be an intergalactic species, I have a really hard time seeing that being under a governmental structure like that. We've never seen it, a fascist government excel, ever. We've seen the governments that have the most freedom for the people are the ones that do the best. And I think that tells you a lot about the individual's ability to manage their own affairs and to excel. So that's where I stand on that, for sure. Even with all of the issues that I saw with this, once again, 99% crap, 99% either uselessness or even counter. Counter insight. I mean, it's the exact opposite of enlightenment. And that's not just with the Order of Nine Angles, unfortunately. I wish it were, because it would my job would be a lot easier if it was just a couple of these groups to look at. I have yet to find a single group that doesn't have the same 99% crap, 1% gold. One of the things that was 1% gold that I saw that was part of that gold that I saw in the Order of Nine Angles, and this is the first time I came in contact with this idea, is in one of their manuscripts they have one or two sentences, and these are in thousands of pages of their manuscripts, one or two sentences that say, by the way, if you go to Saturn in a craft, you go to Saturn and you shoot yourself towards these three specific stars, and that's Algol, Dabi, and Naos. Travel towards it. Right before your craft comes into contact with that star, you're going to enter into a gateway that exists physically that will lead into the A-causal world, a realm that most people would consider to be absolute chaos. It's the abyss that's talked about a lot and not much is known about. And so you can get there in a craft if you do this, and that is one of the reasons for wanting to enhance a space travel program, to be able to actually get there physically. But that you can also ritually open up these gates and call what's on the other side here. And so it would basically be a redirect, that you would be opening it up and the gateway would open up in whichever star you're focusing on, pull it through to Saturn, and then from Saturn to the Earth, and that's actually looking at the astrological elements of Saturn. That does make perfect sense as to why that would be that gateway. And so yeah, that was the first time I ever came across the idea of astral gates. And okay, well that's cool. So I started looking more into that, really just focused and zeroed in on that one topic, and started finding, in a lot of the grimoire traditions that you'll have gateways that are opened up. Even a mandala that you're going to lay on the ground is itself a gateway that you open up that allows two-way travel between the worlds. And so I start finding in various grimoires that they have these gates. Finding out that the tattvas can be used as gates that you can actually use to access the various realms or various sections of the astral realm through them. The Sephirotic and Klipothic spheres, if you use the symbols or focus on the spheres, or if you, in an astral state, simply travel to that sphere, you're going to find that you're not looking at something on the physical world, that you actually do come into the astral plane and a very specific part of the astral plane depending on that gate. I also started,
This is something that's also part of the Golden Dawn system, by the way.
yeah, oh yeah, and that's what I started finding out is like, because I just came across it in this manuscript, just a blip, just a little like.
We call it scrying in the spirit vision.
Yeah. No, Garden of Pomegranates had at least a chapter on that. That's one book that I referenced as I was researching this, was getting into Garden of Pomegranates, going, oh wow, okay, so this isn't some obscure practice. So this is actually fundamental to a lot of different systems. This idea of gateways, and following it even further. Not only are there these artificial gateways that you can draw and open up, but that you have also natural gateways. And these are just pass-throughs, once again, two-way pass-throughs between the worlds. And so you've got what could be called, weak spots, where in some folklore that you can feel it either as a hot or a cold space as you're passing through it, that seems to exist just right there. Most people who are even a little bit sensitive will target specific areas and say, see, if you go here, weird stuff happens. And sure enough, repeatedly, weird stuff will happen in these weak spots. You've got structural gates, and so rather than having a symbol that you're opening up, that various structures can do the same thing. We've got that with the obelisk is one. Obelisk is a very, very powerful gate. Pyramids are definitely gateways, and indeed, I think that somehow it got started that pyramids were just really fancy tombs for the pharaoh, and that's not the case at all. That they actually serve a much greater purpose than that, and one of those is most definitely that pass through. The tattvas as well, because you can use the symbol of it, but also the elements themselves are gateways. And as I started playing with that, I found that there are what I've called the three great gateways, because as far as I was saying, if you're able to add these three elements to any of these gateway operations, you're going to see it expand massively, and that's fire, water, and blood. Those three things, if you use them, one or all of them, in a gate opening, it's going to be almost automatic and instantaneous, and you're going to find that gateway becomes quite a bit more stabilized than it would be otherwise, by just using intention, focus, and whatever ritual means, and that these three, fire, water, and blood, are themselves gateways into very specific realms within the spiritual worlds. Now, organisms are also nexions. Nexion basically just being once again a gateway, but a potent gateway. The more complex the organism, the greater a gateway it is. So if you've got an amoeba, probably not a very powerful gateway. You build yourself or go up the ladder a bit and come to humans. Humans are excellent gateways. We are, as far as we know, the most complex creature in existence. The human neocortex is the most informationally dense matter that we've ever seen, and that we can even imagine. So with that humans indeed are, by our very existence, are gateways between the worlds. And that's something I was told in an Enochian working that I was doing was I said, well, what do I need to do, and where's the next step? And once again, very interested in these gates. And I say, well, give me a gate that I can draw and work with. And he says, you are the gate, and you are the you are the gateway, and you are the path, and you are the palace at the end of the path. The individual is amazing as far as what we're all capable of, and what we are essentially. Now, the only other organization, the only other complexity that we know of that's greater than the individual human is many humans coming together for one cause, and you take that to a large enough scale. Civilization itself is a massive gateway for once again the comings and goings of spiritual beings. You'll see a lot of phenomenon that's very unusual going on around human civilizations, specifically their rise and fall, and their peaks. That at these great occasions of civilization doing what it does, that there's a lot of weird things that get reported. Now, you can open these gateways through, once again, focused intention, through ritual, mantra, meditation, whatever the case may be. But once you withdraw your attention and you're no longer feeding the gateway, it's going to start to close up. And so, one thing that I've been meditating on is how to keep them open without having to do anything. And really, there are a few things that have been done, and actually have been done for quite a long time. You can take these three great gateways of fire, water, and blood, and use those to feed the gateways. Of course, we've talked about blood, that you could do this through human sacrifice. Could and should, are obviously two different things entirely. Now, you can use water. If you look at the ancient Yazidi cult, the Yazidis were one of the first groups in existence to actually form a religion around basically the bad guys of the religion.
Before we go on, I wanted to make one other point. As long as we're contrasting the systems.
Yes.
Actually, in the Golden Dawn, we open gateways as well. We do this through ritual invocation and using either tattvas or elemental symbols or flashing colors, a whole variety of different focuses for attention to open these gateways. But it's a part of our tradition that we always close them afterward as well, so that there's no seepage of energy afterward. Banishing is very important. It's an extremely important part of our tradition.
It most definitely is, and that actually is a divergence between the once again the so-called right and left-hand paths, which we're going to start seeing that these gaps closing in the near future, as we are presently, and that in the left-hand traditions, banishing is not as much an issue, because it's assumed that if you're calling these things up, that you want them in your life and you want them there for a good amount of time. Of course, that does take wisdom in what you're going to be calling on and what gates you're going to be opening, for sure. And then there is the I guess you'd call it golem issue. You create a golem and give it a command, and once it's lived out the command, if it continues to wander, it's going to be chaos. So you do have to have an end date for a lot of it. But if your goals are so long term that they're not going to be met for quite a while, leaving that gateway open to continually feed those goals, such as creating an interstellar human order, that could be a good thing. But there would need to be, and that's part of the I think the complexity of stabilizing astral gateways is that there does need to be that intentionality with what you're wanting to come through it, and whether or not you can control what comes through it. Because even the most ancient traditions had the admonition of as a magician, you're not just somebody who's using this power to affect the world, but a good deal of the time, I mean, the Persian Magi were known as the keepers of the gate, in that they were the ones who had the power to protect this planet from the things without. And so I think there is a lot of credence to shutting the gate. I do think that in some cases, leaving it open could be very advantageous to the goals as well.
A lot of times when we have long-term things we're trying to do, we do banish after, but then we'll just repeat. We'll repeat it.
Open
and close,
Close
open
each
and
time.
close.
Now, do you find then in doing so that the gate becomes easier and easier to open with each repetition.
Well, with practice, it's much easier to scry into the planes of these forces. But there's another reason for that too. It's like, okay, if you have a white wall and you paint a splash of red on it, well, you really see that splash of red. But if on top of that you paint a splash of brown, a splash of green, now you have brown. You're not seeing the green anymore. This is why in the Golden Dawn tradition, before we invoke any planetary force, which is more subtle than the elemental forces, we make sure that we banish all of the elemental forces, and that we banish any other planetary forces that may be left hanging around as well, so that you can contact that pure energy of that particular force, that specific force that you're invoking.
Oh no, most definitely. That's there is a psychic residue that does need to be cleared out in order to invoke new. Yes.
In the fairy traditions, we don't do much in the way of banishing either. We work with the cycles of the seasons and open the doorways at the seasonal markings. And then basically as far as closing the doorway goes, we just say something as simple as at dawn, all things return as they were.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, it seems like that's been effective for you so far. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be practicing it. So, yeah. So no,
Excellent. Now the Zetis, who were, I guess, most people would consider them, and they have kind of gone down as one of the first devil worshipping cults out there, but they didn't acknowledge a devil. They acknowledged Melek Taus, being translated as the Peacock King, as a representative from forces beyond human understanding to kind of be an intermediary, and so that's who they worshipped and performed their rites to. Now, what they would do is they had their temples set up inside of caves, and it was specific that they had to have water, a river running through the caves, and right next to their ritual area. Now, not only did each of them have a river going through it, and this is from Russia to Iran. Iran was the main area that they were active in, that each of their temples were connected to the same streams. And so the water that's flowing through that, constant flowing water, is going to leave those gateways and continue to feed those gateways, and not only just the one gateway of that one temple, but all of them. So it creates a circuit that invigorates every temple with every ritual, every gate working. And so you would have to have very clear, unified goals that you're working on in order to leave those gateways open. And the powers that you're summoning through those gateways would most definitely have to be, I think, constant, where you're not going to be calling. They would have to be constant, and they would have to be a lot more universal than, let's say, planetary or elemental forces, which could conflict. That they would be calling on one very specific sort of power that would flow through that gateway, and that is it. That they're not going to be doing other rituals outside of that in that area in order to keep that gateway open. But so that flowing water does do that. Now, interestingly, conversations I've had with Robert Bruce. Has one of the things that he said is that you can banish a possessing spirit from a person by taking them over running water, and so take them over a river or a stream, and it's gone. He says, if you don't have any rivers or streams, take a garden hose, put it in a circle around the person, turn it on, and as soon as the water starts flowing, the spirit is gone. And the movement of water is definitely a potent way to activate these gateways. So if you draw a gateway, you can and open it. You can definitely use some of these methods to stabilize it. And so once again, that's really one of the big things that I've looked at, is not only how to open them, but how to, and not even how to open them and just keep them open, but stabilize it in that it neither grows too big to control and to decide that you're going to shut that door, and at the same time keep it open. And so fire can do that, or water can do that. Fire can also do it, you could do that. Fire itself isn't isn't enough. It seems that the fire needs to actually be consuming something, and so you would have to do repeated offerings of whatever you're going to offer, whether it's incense, different herbs, different fragrances. Obviously, there are a lot of cultures that do perform animal sacrifice, and then we'll burn the carcass, and that will allow that consumption. But in some way, you'd have to continue to feed it on a regular basis to keep it open. Obviously, you're wanting to be able to open it and then kind of step away and let it do its thing. And so with using fire to open that gateway, you would want to basically do something that would allow it to allow you to kind of only have to go back every so often. A lot of systems that do use fire in their gateways, where they will either there's one where they've on the ground of their temple, and this is a temple in Las Vegas that I can't speak too much about. That's a pretty amazing place that has grooves in the ground where they'll pour kerosene and light that, and the kerosene will come up, and as that's burning, they're going to perform their rituals to open that gateway, and they'll do that once a month, and that monthly opening of the gateway through fire in that way, according to them, leaves that gateway open for the duration of that month, and then every new moon they will come back and do the same thing.
Could I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So opening these gateways in your tradition, what is channeled through them? Is it Enochian energies, demons themselves, Satan, that the archetype of Satan, is that what is being channeled through these gateways?
Well, for my particular practices, never Satan.
And that's not a figure I identify with at all, but and that's going to be that'll most definitely depend on what the gateway exactly is that you're going to be opening, and what your purposes are for it. For myself, it's almost always going to be, I'm going to have one, and I should say that I always work. I always work from the end result back, and so rather than going, well, I want to work with Jupiterian forces, and so what can I do with that?
So you do work with planets.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Planets, different god forms. Most definitely. I've very, very intensely immersed myself into a lot of Hermeticism specifically. It has a lot of richness to offer for sure.
Is that more of a hybridized path in modern times? Or, because I don't know too much about Satanism, but I do know a little bit about Christianity, and that the fallen angel Lucifer is the godhead in Satanism, in some sects.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I'm just trying to get a pulse on the classical sects and orders that you have drawn from, and what may be hybridized from more paganism throughout history.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, because that's a lot of philosophies and disciplines of what could be easily called traditional Satanism. I mean, I think that most of them ought to change their title because Satanism doesn't describe them at all, and that's kind of a name that's been slapped on a lot of these groups. But for instance, the Yazidi who worship and revere Melek Taus, they don't consider that to be Satan at all. The name is Shaitan, very similar, and so that link has always been drawn. The Peacock King, and the peacock is prideful, and Lucifer's great sin was pride. And so there are a lot of those correlations that you could go, well, this is the same entity, but you also look at Lucifer as being the Roman god of light.
Like the dark aspect of Jupiter be channeled because
most
it's
definitely.
a left-hand path? Is that?
I mean, it definitely could. With each of the planetary spheres or the Sephirotic spheres that it has an inverse. It's called a shell that is the Qliphoth. Yeah.
Projected dark.
Yeah. It's that for everything in these lower worlds, you do have dualism. So with each planet, not only does it have the attributes that you would normally recognize as being the attributes of that planet, but that planet also has attributes of the exact opposite. Okay, so for instance, I was performing and working within the Haitian Vodun paradigm, and I was told to use either black or blue cohosh in order to bring evil forces to me in order to perform this ritual. And I thought, well, and researched a bit, I go, well, I'm pretty sure it was blue cohosh that I said, well, blue cohosh is known to actually do the opposite, to drive spirits away and drive evil forces away. So how, and I even took that to my mentor at the time, Dr. DePrince, and said, hey, what's going on with this? And he said, well, if it possesses the ability to push those forces away, it also possesses the ability to draw them to you equally. For instance, you look at, I believe it's Marbas from the Goetia, has the ability to attack anybody and cause them any disease. I've worked with Marbas a lot, not to cause people disease in those cases, but to heal myself, to heal other people, that Marbas can equally heal and kill. And so you do have that extreme duality.
When you were talking about that, David, like you know how we have the averse forces and the darker spirit aspects of the planet? Or is that totally different?
No, it's the averse forces also have a place in the Golden Dawn tradition.
Right. And so is it
We tend to see these things, though, in more psychological terms. It's one of the few places where I think Rigardi was very insightful, and his whole work with Reichian therapy was quite insightful. And that is that after we've been awakening these subtleties of energy in our energetic bodies through systematic invocation, awakening all the forces of the planets and all the forces of the zodiac and all the forces of the elements, and then balancing these forces in our own energy bodies, we then need to tap into a yet deeper level by the evocation of the opposite energies, the evocation of the adverse forces, thus making them visible where we can see what was unconscious, thus completing the circuit and fully activating the power of that energy.
Yes.
In traditional craft and in the fairy traditions, both, Lucifer is looked at as Lux Feros, the light of iron. And it is the first fall of starlight into manifestation. And the interaction of Adam and Eve is an initiation from spirit into form.
And I don't think that too many people who consider themselves to be in the Judeo-Christian paradigm or religion think that deeply about their own system. because yeah, I mean, and it does come back, well, the original sin, you come back to that, well, this was the original liberation, it seems. And
It's the original challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Initiation.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a challenge creates change.
Well, who earlier was speaking? May I talk about your fire thing?
Ah, the fire thing. It was part of my Godadon practice. I was always to not banished after an invocation, just to know what happened. So I was working my fire grade, and I've done a fire invocation, encounter one, just something like that. And just for studying, I let it happen. I go to work, because I'm a computer engineer, so I have to work. I go back to my home. My flat, I was living in an apartment. My flat was at the first floor. So I approached the gate of the buildings, and there was raining waters in the rain, like the Niagara Falls. Wow, where come that water? I came the stairs, there was water on the stairs, there was water in the elevators, everywhere. I go to the first floor, there was water everywhere. I go to the second floor, water everywhere, and we see bubbling water coming from a flat. There was water bubbling, water everything. And I realized suddenly that the flat where the water going out was just above mine. I said, oh my God, my flat. I go there and open the door, and there's nothing, no water, nothing, not even a bubble. The water was going right, left, on the floor, behind, nothing. And wow, I was wondering, what's going on? There was my salamander we succeed to shut off the water, everything, and I tried to help my guest. In fact, he got a cat, but the cat played with water. In 2 hours, he's left only 2 hours his house. In 2 hours, he totally destroyed all the flats of the building except mine. I've got all the neighbors in my flat to see, but I've got nothing.
That was an awesome story. What I was specifically referring to, when you first worked with Bale, and you had a pot with matches, and it created a vortex of fire as a portal. Well, he was talking about fire as gateways of.
Yes, fire as the gateway. But it's my own practice. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You don't want to talk about it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that.
That was secret, man.
Yes, but after I did the banishing on the fairy salamander, I had to clean all the building in 2 days. Then it was
Dry, everything goes well, as nothing happened.
Yeah. No, you know what? There are so many people who have written and taught about specifically evocation. Have said that you'll experience physical phenomena. You'll experience things like pounding on the walls and voices and everything around you coming into a chaos. Now, I never experienced that myself. I would do the evocation, and my internal senses would shift and click on, and I had full communication. But I really wanted to have things pounding on the walls. I wanted to have lights flashing and all of that. That would have been really cool.
You're watching too much.
I know. Well, but other people have said that it happens. Now, here's what happened. Now, I moved up to Wisconsin, and I was renting a room out with a few other people. And there was a girl who was renting a room out downstairs. And I'm in doing an evocation in my bedroom, and all of the communication is going telepathically. It's being received internally. It's a very quiet thing, and that's always been a difficult thing with filming ritual for me. Is a lot of it's going to look like just some guy sitting on his couch. For the life of me, I was as quiet as I could possibly be. But next thing I know, my roommate is pounding on my door. Stop the racket! Whatever you're doing, stop it! I'm going, well, I'm just sitting here in a chair looking into a black mirror. Like I'm not making any noise at all. I thought maybe I'm just squeaking my chair or something. I don't know. And so I go, oh yeah, sorry. She goes downstairs, and I get the ritual back, get back into the state, get back into communication. Right as soon as the communication starts, she comes back up. I asked you, please. And I'm going, this time I know I was being quiet. And so I opened the door and talked to her about which, and sure enough, pounding on the wall. She said, it sounded like you had a hand, hand was up there that you're pounding the floor with. And so it seems like the actual temple itself is fortified with that spiritual presence, and everything on the immediate periphery is what gets affected. So that's interesting that your area was the only, and you had the salamander that was protecting it. The people specifically outside of the area, outside of that protection of the temple. So yeah. Not that you won't experience things in the temple, because you definitely do have some really strange occurrences. But as far as those freak, out of control phenomena, I mean, for the most part, that seems to occur more outside of the temple than within it. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. Now, as far as what you're, what you're going to call through it, these original gateways that spurred my interest, being gateways into what the Order of Angels calls E.A.Koetting, being the unmanifest, and once again, this is an area outside of the reach of divine providence. This is absolutely unexplored, undiscovered area of existence.
Is that anything like Isfet?
You know what? Yes, I think so. I'm not sure. I should sit down and give that some meditation, but
because in Egyptian there's Ma'at and order, and there's Isfet, and
that may
manifest.
And that may be the similar to the Persian idea of Ahura Mazda and Ahriman, of being one is, Ahura Mazda is the creator and sustainer, whereas Ahriman is the one who brings chaos and destruction, and that both are aspects of the same wheel. And so but no.
I've seen that term Lucifer and Ahriman, or in in the work of Rudolf Steiner.
Right. Yeah.
Rudolf Steiner references the Persian as a good representation of that knowledge. Just know that.
Yeah. No. Excellent. Yeah. That's but no. The E.A.Koetting is not the same thing, because those two forces of creation and destruction exist within the framework of duality. The E.A.Koetting transcends duality entirely. That it is both creation and destruction at the same time. That it's not a
uncreated.
Uncreated, uncreatable. That it is. It's not a space that you enter into, but it's a point. It's a singularity. And so it's everything and nothing at once. Is the definition of incomprehensibility. Now the aim and the full work of the Black Adept is to presence that E.A.Koetting, presence that unmanifest. And at that point, especially according to Nemo Alias was able to submit an article that's going to be published in my upcoming Anthology of Sorcery collection, and his work in there, called The Black Order of the Ages, goes through pretty specifically how the Dark Adept is going to open up these gateways in themselves and in the world around them in order to presence this unmanifest principle. And he will arrive at two paths that he can go to once he does that. The first is submission to the majesty of something so far beyond human comprehension, and the dissolution of the self into it. And even doing that would therefore, I think, lead the Black Adept into the right-hand path in a very real way, where they would be submitting themselves to a greater authority. The other option, and this is for somebody who wants to and is intent on pursuing their own autonomy to the furthest level, is to presence that and familiarize themselves with it at a intimate level, where they become one with it, and then after that union has taken place, to force themselves into a rebirth into their own selves, and almost a rejection of the autonomy of that infinite realm of possibility that is the E.A.Koetting. Therefore, no longer being commanded by it, but allowing them to therefore command it. Doing this is the most difficult thing for any adept to do, to be able to presence such a thing, and then to at the same time assert your dominance over it. But that's the goal of the Black Magician, without a doubt, is to enter into that sort of autonomy. Now, those three gateways. The first being Algol. Algol is actually the star, and you said to take an hour, and I think I'm taking much more than that. Am I good to just keep going? I kind of ramble and I enjoy talking. So.
I think everyone's enjoying it.
Excellent. All right. So Algol actually is the star system that made me a believer in astrology, because I thought it was all just bogus until I started looking at Algol. Now, Algol is a binary star system. So you have two stars, one smaller, one larger, that are circling each other, and they have a matter stream transferring from one to the other. As it comes around, from our vantage, as they align, what looks like a large star looks like it collapses into a smaller star, just because they're no longer side by side, but they're being seen telegraphically. So, as you, telescopically, sorry, as you see that, what it looks like in the sky is it looks like it's blinking. A slow blink, but a blink nonetheless. In Persia, they called it Rosh Agul, I could be wrong about the name, but it basically means the demon's head, the devil's head. That they would see that, and that was always an omen of bad things when there was an alignment of Earth with Algol. And so they started drawing that parallel. I think they may have been one of the first to actually see and notice and start making records of the odd alignments of that. Now, later on, Algol got to be in the Perseus system as Medusa's head, and so that winking eye is the winking eye of Medusa's head. And obviously, Medusa had her head severed, and there's a massive connection. Every time you see Algol line up with Earth, there is some very, very well-reported incident of somebody's head being chopped off, whether it's a leader, a religious leader, or just for some reason it gets reported, regardless of the era. Without the internet, it's been reported quite a bit. That alignment does result in a very public beheading. Now, the name. Oh wait a minute. Okay, so Algol represents bloodshed and decapitation, and it's aligned with what the Order of 9 Angles and some other traditions as well consider to be part of and an essence of Baphomet, not being necessarily the figure of, as Eliphas Levi drew it, being the Sabbatic goat, but prior to that version of it, that Baphomet was the dark goddess, the bloody goddess, and so that's definitely an alignment with Algol. The second star is Dabi. Dabi is in the Copernicus system, and it's translated as or known as the butcher. Now, Copernicus is obviously has the symbolism of the goat. Now, all of the different names of the different stars and their meanings all deal around goats. Dabi is the only one that is the goat being immolated in fire as a sacrifice. Now, I should mention that these three star systems were revered as being these gateways for a long, long time. According to the founders and leaders of the ONA, that this is a traditional knowledge that has been kept for generations, and so the intentionality of this is really pretty intense as far as the alignment of it. Algol is not just a head; it's a severed head, a severed head that is then winking at the audience.
So these three stars have a correlation with three, I think the water, the fire, and the blood.
Most definitely, yeah. Yes, they actually do. Algol is blood, most definitely, where it's Medusa's head, severed head, dripping blood from it. That it's definitely associated with blood. Interestingly, Algol, the color of the physical star is red. Now, you get Dabi, the butcher, and this is for fire. That's the association there, and the color of the star is yellow. Naos is the next one, and Naos is it's in the Puppis constellation, and it's blue, and it's associated with water. And so you have a very clear alignment of these three elemental gateways aligning with these three stars. Now, I would have, and so with Dabi, the butcher, it's the goat being sacrificed. With Algol, it's the head being severed. And then with Naos is in the Puppis system, and it's part of what used to be a larger constellation that was the Argo. So Jason and the Argonauts' ship. But it's not just a ship; it's a ship that has been destroyed. You see, when you see the constellation, or the group of constellations that they are drifted apart. The ship is broken, and the different parts are recognized as their own constellations. And so we have not just objects that are associated with these, but objects that have been destroyed. that there's that deconstructionism embedded into the very stars themselves. Now, I started looking at these three gateways actually extremely recently, and one of the things that I was a little afraid of, because I had to basically chart it, and so I got an app on my Kindle that you can point up at the sky and see where the different stars are at. So I figured out how to use that, and then started mapping out where these stars would be. And I was a little afraid that they would form just a line or no real shape at all, but they actually form a pretty perfect triangle. That if we were to travel basically at any point from here to any other point across the galaxy, we would pass through an invisible membrane between these three stars. That these three stars are spanning our entire universe, and really intersecting it, and creating once again that an invisible or imaginary veil that you would have to pass through. So where they consider these three stars to be gateways into the E.A.Koetting is most definitely very interesting. And I was actually, as I was researching all of this, and this was all in the last month that I was doing a lot of research into these three gates, the correlations were very impressive. It's always a vindication to me when you start to look seriously into these things and start seeing that it all lines up. And that kind of alleviates my concern that I'm just crazy, really, because that's really easy to get into going, well, we are on the border of insanity constantly, and so having these validations are perfect.
Leslie,
I know that.
I'm sorry. No.
The Duon, is typically seen as being, as I believe, I mean, I could be wrong, like the Scorpio, the arrow of Sagittarius in that location in the sky. Were any of these stars near Scorpio or Sagittarius, or did they?
I think.
That's okay.
I'll do some research. I think one of them is because as I'm mapping out and finding out where anything's at in a galactic map is intense, because you've got all directions to be concerned about. But I would find general locators as I'm using this app to find these stars. I'd say, oh wait, I've seen this one, and one of them is close to Sagittarius. I know that because that was one of the big ones that I would see and go, oh, okay, I'm almost there, just a little to the left, or whatever. So there is a proximity there for sure. So yeah.
Do you know which star that was? Right on.
I don't at all. Right. Now, interestingly, these connect to Saturn as the gateway that would lead back to Earth, and Saturn. I was told as I was working with Azazel, I did a 90-day operation where for each day, throughout 90 days, I would evoke Azazel and ask him just to teach me what he knows. Give me everything you can, and it ended up in the book of Azazel, and it ended up in me coming to a lot of realizations about a lot of things. But one of the things I was told was he told me to go to the dark rings of Saturn, and I thought, well, go to the dark rings of Saturn. And so I started looking into that and see that you got the rings on Saturn, and the dark rift in between them is actually created from one moon, a tiny, tiny moon that's orbiting, that all of these particles are hitting, deflecting off of, and creating a groove. So this one tiny little planet is disrupting the entire thing.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. You're good. But yeah, so there's once again that alignment of something that I received through a channeled contact, lining up with other information that's out there, and lining up with the physical world that's observable. And those things are definitely important to me to once again just counter my own fears and insecurity about insanity versus actual anything that's usable and real. to prove the reality of it is definitely useful. So to have those connections make themselves present for sure is excellent. Now I had somebody from the Order of Nine Angles who is a high adept in this order tell me that once any of these stargates are open, they can also allow a causal essence or even the dark gods themselves to travel through the gate to this side, to our world. Now if all three of them are opened at once, he says outer darkness will converge upon this physical plane. Now what that means is a massive disruption in the way things are done. That means a lot of trials, a lot of interesting times, but it also does mean that there's going to be a massive evolutionary jump for humanity once that happens. Now, that is exactly really the ritual that I had planned, along with Nemo Alias, Nate Bales, and Scarlet Marie, to perform here. And there was a lot of outcry about that as I meditated on that. I don't blame anybody for being sketchy about opening up a gateway that will that could possibly allow outer darkness to converge upon this beautiful area. So, I've opted to not perform that ritual at all at this point. We do have plans for performing that ritual in private in another time or place that is more appropriate. But the idea of this is definitely interesting. Now, what's even more interesting to me is that the stated goal of the left-hand path is to disrupt the routine by the insertion of novelty. And the novelty, as Terence McKenna might put it, is really it's a freak occurrence that's so far outside of what normally goes on, and it's seemingly unprovoked by mundane circumstances that just about everybody who observes this phenomenon is compelled to react to it. So something that happens that throws everybody off of what they're doing, that makes everybody go, oh, whoa.
Excuse me, would that be the 60s be an example of that?
I think the 60s was a novelty in its own.
But I mean, would that not be an example?
It most definitely would, and you do see that the 60s
Because they said it was evil.
Oh.
It was all love to the people who embraced it. It was all about love. It was a foreign concept to the rest of the world. And we know that it was not a negative. It was love, but to other people it was very negative. Oh my God, what are those young people doing? Kid State, all the things, you know how they came down on people for expressing their difference.
Yeah, came down on them and shot them in some cases.
Yeah,
So yeah.
in the name of whomever.
And really in the name of the status quo, in the name of not wanting to shake things up too much, wanting things to stay the way they are. And that is indeed what the left-hand path I think pushes against is stasis, that pushing things forward, and the pushing. Yeah. Most definitely.
There was love without structure in the 60s.
Yeah.
And that's why the establishment, which was the establishment of that structure, abhorred it because it was love without structure.
Most definitely. But the Black Adept recognizes himself as being the vehicle for novelty. That the true Black Adept is going to live in a way that he is constantly allowing innovation to flow through him, allowing progress to flow through him or her, and letting that affect the world in as intense a way as they're able to. And the question would always should come up of well, why aren't things good? Aren't things good enough? And the why is really answered by a few things that really come down to the ethics and the focus of the Black Magician, which is that the Black Magician does not believe that this life is a punishment or a test or anything like that, that we have come here into these physical bodies, into this physical world, not to see if we're worthy or once again to be punished for anything that we've possibly done in another incarnation, but we're here because we are trying to this is the best grounds for the development of godhood. It's difficult to do things here. It's hard. It takes work to make things happen in this world, and it's a perfect ground for energy that is infinite to converge upon itself and to do something new. That there's that once again, to create novelty, to create something that is entirely unique. And so even the very existence of the black magician himself is to himself evidence of his own godhood. And the black adept is most definitely in contact with aeonic intelligences, so being intelligences that see much further than the next 5 years, but are planning out and enacting those plans to push things in a direction in the next 1,000 years.
When you speak of aeonic intelligences, it sounds like Gnosticism?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely there is definitely that Gnostic entanglement in there. Of course, the whole term Gnosticism has at this point, I think, been borrowed and used in different groups that don't necessarily have rights to it, or at least not full rights. That it's the term Gnostic at this point has been really tied into specific Hermetic schools, and that's not necessarily fully accurate. I mean, gnosis is knowledge, and so yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if there was a question. Okay.
I was just curious because I was wondering how in the Gnostic, in certain Gnostic schools, they see the eons as playing a certain particular role, and I was wondering in this paradigm that you're talking about, what is the role of the eonic forces?
Yeah. At this point, in the current stage of our current eon, and you have people saying that we're entering a new age, and people said that the 60s was the dawn of a new age. Well, the aeons, if you actually look at the entire layout of it, it's a long time. It's a long time. And so we're not entering into a new eon. We're entering into new phases of the current one. The phase that we're currently in is what I call, and what a lot of left-hand path people recognize as being the age of revealing. And so in this current age, the great work is to, as was prophesied in the good old Bible, is to shout the secrets from the rooftops, to expose everything, including and especially your own secrets, in order to allow what's within you to be shared with the collective. And so that's really, if you're tapping into these forces in an authentic way, and they are actually directing what you're going to do, you're going to find that you are less secret and more authentic, and that all of your works will lend towards that unveiling and that I think that mass illumination. So.
Going back to what you said about the purpose of the black magician, would another way to say that is the purpose of us being here? Would another way of saying that be that we are here to explore the limits of power? And the answer to that is there are no limits.
Yes, yes, and yes. And that's for me, that's been a terrifying reawakening every time that I approach that question of, well, how far can I push this? And well, how far do you dare go? There are no limits, and the limits are in what obviously all the limits are going to be self-imposed, and then once you break through certain boundaries, you kind of start to see the veils peeling back even more, and an infinite universe is terrifying, because we like spaces. We like to be able to identify and to label things, and when you're not able to do that, it makes things very, very difficult. And so really, and that's part of the task of contacting and presencing these acausal forces, is because they are indeed outside of what we can define. So yeah. Now, also, as far as the black magician becoming the vehicle for novelty, one of the things that's driving this, and one of the reasons that he's doing this, and one of the things that powers it, is that the black magician possesses the knowledge and the power to accomplish any task at all, through magic, through physical action, through mental, emotional, psychological focus, through all of these things that he knows that he is able to do anything. And that's not any different than any other path. However, that's also combined with a lack of any restriction at all, where the left-hand path follower is only going to rely on their own self-knowledge to guide them, rather than any norms, any laws or restrictions that are given to him by another mortal. And the only way to discover that is to discover it yourself, to put yourself into these situations, and you don't necessarily always have to push things all the way to the edge. You don't need to have, once again, you don't need to have Isaac on the altar with a dagger in your hand before you realize that human sacrifice isn't something that's going to elevate you. Hopefully you would be able to reach that just by wisdom. I mean, for God's sake.
What you're saying is you should put up your own moral values and not listen to someone else and be a fucking sheep.
Most definitely, but also you have to be aware of deconstructionism for its own sake, of destroying the temple just because it's there and you think it can be destroyed. That it should be focused and guided by wisdom, and that your own personal ethics and morals should most definitely be authentic and divorced from any sense of specifically ego compensation. I think that's a big thing when it comes to morality, is that a lot of it is very compensatory. That you're looking at a way of asserting your own dominance when you don't necessarily have to. Does that make sense? So that's something to always kind of approach all of that with, as far as, well, what are my ethics and what are my morals, and how do I feel about this, that, the other. One example of that is I was raised in a Mormon family. We had I've got 4 sisters and 2 brothers, and then my parents divorced, and then I had step brothers and sisters all over the place, and I've got a lot of siblings, and so, as a rebellion to that, I guess, as a largely unconscious rebellion to that, I didn't want to have a family. I didn't care for families. I didn't think families were all that important, really. I have a daughter now that's 9 years old, and at this point, the main focus in my life, my one ethical direction is the care and upbringing of my daughter, and the unity of family, and family extending to spiritual family, to cultural family. That the connectivity between human beings has become extremely important for me, but that didn't occur until I personally experienced what that actually means. So it's.
Well, I'm not saying that you should pick your moral values and never change them. You should always have your moral values under a magnifying glass, and always constantly revisit it. So yeah. I understand that completely. I don't think there's anything wrong at all in changing your moral values, but I still think you should place them for yourself. Yeah, no,
you definitely should. You definitely should, and experiment with them. I mean, experiment with them, and different things will motivate you in different ways. And so if you kind of figure out what button to push to make something happen for yourself, keep pushing that button and see what it does. One thing when people who have been practicing specifically practical magic for a while kind of get into a thing, and I do this a lot, where I was talking to a friend of mine where I go, good stuff seems to happen for me quite a bit, and I attribute it to my rituals. But maybe it's just because good stuff happens. Like maybe good stuff just happens. He goes. Well, if you want to find out if it's due to your magic, stop doing your magic. And sure enough, I did so, and the good stuff just stopped happening as frequently and as spontaneously as it would. And so yeah, so that's one way to experiment with your morality is to stop doing whatever you're doing and see the effect, because most of it, I think most of our actions are pretty automatic. We don't think about them too much, that we just kind of go through life, even with our personal belief systems, that they're pretty much unconscious. And as soon as you become conscious of it, then you can really start to, I think, mold it in a way that is going to project you towards something or another. But yeah, okay. So with the aim of the black magician being to disrupt the status quo, the aim of that ritual that we were going to perform of opening these 3 gateways was definitely going to disrupt the status quo. I think as soon as we announced this ritual, that there was an outcry like I haven't heard for quite a while, where the folks and I will say for the record at this point that the left-hand path, right-hand path dichotomy is false. It's made up. It's an illusion that if you pay attention to with enough focus, that you're going to lose sight of your own godlike power, because you're going to be concerned, well, where do I stand? Am I right-hand path or left-hand path? Does this make me a Satanist? Does this make me, a Wiccan? Well, none of that matters. None of that matters, really one bit, because these are all just labels that we're putting on things that we really can't define in the first place. So with that in mind, people who believe that they are pure representatives of either the right or the left converged upon me, upon David, upon this temple, and did everything they could to try to stop me from coming and performing this ritual. There is a massive disruption. There are conversations that are going on now that never would have gone on about the Golden Dawn, about Satanism, about the Order of Nine Angles, about my path and my works. Oh, I can keep a pretty good eye on subscribers that I have, Facebook followers, Twitter. I have a team that actually watches all of this and sees how things are doing as far as my promotion goes, and I get a call that says, your videos are being watched like records. I mean, people are just flooding into YouTube to check out what we're doing. Well, okay, that's really cool. So it's caused a reaction. I'll say that if the goal for myself as being somebody that identifies as a black magician is to disrupt the status quo, if this ritual was intended to disrupt the status quo, it was successful without me having to perform it at all. That the status quo has been disrupted, disturbed, and because of this, things are evolving, and that's something that's I think needs to be understood pretty clearly, is that no one who is an adept of any sort is going to destroy just for destruction. That destruction may be a momentary side effect of the other focuses and intentions that we're trying to manifest. The manifestation is change. If you look at one of the most ancient forms of a dark lord is Ahriman in ancient Persia. Ahriman was not a cast-out devil or even a destructive force. Ahriman was the force of motion, whereas Ahura Mazda was the force of stability. These two forces coming together can create. In the very Avestan creation myth, Ahura Mazda was not able to create anything. He was able to lay out time. He was able to put form into motion. But one thing that he could not do was create light. That there was a world that was a universe that was devoid of light, and obviously without light, I mean, the whole thing is just still a causality, and that's most definitely because you do need the darkness and you need the light. Ahriman was able to bring that into play. So destruction is not the end goal. Baneful works is not the end goal. The end goal is change, motion. the human race, as well as any living species, on its own is going to do the least amount of work possible, unless there's some other impetus to drive them to do more work. So our evolution is not going to go forward at all unless there's some sort of motivating factor, some impetus that pushes us and challenges us. We notice that whenever there's a massive disaster in the world, that this tends to bring people together. We all saw it, in this country, immediately after September 11th, massive coming together.
And wasn't that blood magic?
Most definitely was blood magic. Yeah, no, most definitely. And, so it's that force of extreme disturbance that allows people to, first of all, the first reaction is fear, obviously. When people are faced with any kind of major change, the first reaction is fear, and then the fear usually will tend towards either union or hatred. Those are really the two paths that you can choose when you're embracing or when you're looking at and faced with fear, is to embrace hatred or to embrace unity. I choose unity most of the time.
That's a question
Of course.
about demons in the book of Solomon. In the book of Enoch, Solomon used the demons to build his temple.
Right.
And I wonder, maybe someone here can explain to me, why would King Solomon use the demons to build the temple rather than the angels?
Well,
I mean, from my understanding, I may not understand, but are demons, do they possess maybe certain skills that the angels might not possess? Like they may be better builders, or they may have certain jobs that the angels don't have
You can
in
have
service of
complete
God?
command over them.
well, and even you can have complete command over anything you want to have command over. You can if you can evoke it, you can command it. The very process of evocation is command.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I really meant to say, because that's evocation versus evocation, or invocation.
Mhm.
So that's why.
Yeah, but now.
But I'm just asking, King Solomon, why would he choose to, in the book from the book of
Yes,
Enoch?
because they sweep the dirty. Because angels are messenger of God. They are on duties, so we use the right tools for the right works. So he used demons not as tools, not because they are evil.
Right.
Right.
Well, and further, if you look at the 72 bound demons, just about all of them you can actually trace back to ancient Mesopotamia, where they were worshipped as gods prior to Judaism coming in and
They were
changing
gods,
that over.
city gods. Yeah.
So the myth of Solomon's temple, I mean, that's rich. I mean, we could spend, I think, all day dissecting that and looking at why he did that, the binding of those spirits into the vessel, whether or not Solomon existed at all. I mean, we can get into that. Whether the temple was a physical structure, or if the temple was in fact the symbolic beehive, meaning that he being a representative and a prophet and a king of God, is reaching across the aisle to take hands with the demons to work with them. There's a lot of symbolism that you can look into that entire mythology, and it's pretty rich. So yeah. But I don't have a direct
But
answer
that would
for
be
you.
black hat, left hand working with right hand,
That would be.
right?
I think I have some ideas on that, but definitely take it with a grain of salt. My interpretation of the situation is that there's the various levels of creation, and within the Earth sphere, as God's will is filtered through the layers. By the time it comes to the Earth sphere, there's again, take this with a grain of salt. The demons, so to speak, are essentially the Earth agents of angelic emanations. So my interpretation of your question, which again could be off, is that to use if you wanted to do something in the Earth sphere, even though you would, I would imagine, guide them through angelic
Forces.
network forces,
Thanks.
they would be like the pen in the hand of
I
the
understand.
Okay, that's just take that
So
with a
there's
grain of
like
salt.
the Barzabel working. Barzabel is almost always considered to be demonic. That is referred to as the demon of Mars. But when you get into the actual essence of it and look at who Barzabel is, it's the active spirit of Mars. It's the power versus the intelligent, or the power versus the authority, maybe. That the angel might represent the divine authority, whereas the demon would represent the active power that can create change.
Well, did you, a
That's
few minutes
in our
ago you
system, too.
mentioned a specific force that it could not create light?
Yeah.
What was that?
Ahura Mazda.
I remember.
Okay.
You,
Well, what Jackie's bringing up, it gets me to thinking about, Solomon was creating the temple, which is earth, which is matter, which is dense, which is low vibration, and perhaps use the demons to work specifically with dense matter rather than light spirit. And
So
So that
to
comes up.
manifest in this plane, we have to use, we have to go use the left hand.
I mean, yeah.
Or,
I work with Hecate, but I don't see that Hecate is all left hand.
That's what I was
Right.
gonna
No, it's not
say.
all
It doesn't have.
So-
That doesn't mean you have to be left-hand path. You can do like the Goetia is. I mean, if you look at the author, it's nothing.
S.L.
new to
McGregor
Golden Dawn.
Mathers translated the Goetia.
Yeah, it's nothing new to Golden Dawn magicians. We do both, but it's just suggested and highly that you work with invocation before you work with evocation.
It's
Well, sorry. When you say demon, in our culture, there's an automatic judgment.
Right.
And that judgment is evil. If we remove that, then we have spirit. And as you pointed out too, this is where they have the power to bring matter into manifestation or form because they are bound to the earth.
so should it be like light and dark instead of good and bad?
You have to
Yeah.
separate morality from the reality. Morality is a judgment about what is good and what is matter for us, but it's spirit. It's a religion matter, but there is reality and justice, which is a law what have to do. You do the law, it's apply the law, but the duty of demon is to apply the law commanded by what you can command them. They are like electricity, things, air, traffic light, policemen, somewhere there. They are the cope with the universe. Comment se dit? J'ai oublié le mot.
Conglomeration?
It's an interactive universe. It's something that must exist because it's mandatory to exist in a lower plane. Like, for example, the elementaries like undines, salamanders, they are far lower. It's basic lower thing on smaller about humans, and then there's demons. If it takes jumblic systems, demons are above humans. So they are invisible and immortal, they are just mortal. They are found somewhere above us, but they are below because angels work on higher place and they have higher duties. The words they have to, like the Kabbalistic plane, like 4 planes, for those who know the 4 planes. So the lower planes, we call them demons, but we can call them fallen angels. That's a better word for me to design demons.
Well, fallen.
Now, I'm concerned, excuse me, I'm going to interrupt here and intervene here a little bit, because as interesting as this discussion is, I think this would be a great topic for us to continue discussing on the Facebook group. What are angels, what are demons? But I'm concerned that you're not going to be able to get through your prepared
Okay,
remarks.
yeah.
So please go ahead.
No,
Please
and-
proceed.
And all of okay, so we were going to perform this ritual. The ritual of such a gate opening into the E.A.Koetting would be intended to incite change, not destruction, not darkness and evil, change, which
Not the zombie apocalypse.
not yet, unfortunately. I'm still
Or
working
the opening of a hellmouth with the denizens
opening of the
flowing through. We're not going to have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man marauding through Manhattan.
I'm still working on that ritual. But no, it was to incite change. And in the moment of great change, if it is not change that's initiated by the individual, there's a lot of concern about that. The change was going to be pretty widespread as far as ourselves, our families, communities, society as a whole, and really into the fabric of connected consciousness, really. And once again, I feel like a lot of that has already been put into motion without even having to perform the ritual. Those are always my favorite kinds of rituals, that in the preparation for it, it already comes about. So the ritual we're going to be doing tonight, though, is going to be very special. First of all, it's one that I've never performed anything like this before. Not only have I never performed this, but in its true form, this ritual has not been performed for thousands of years. The Magi of Persia had a hard time with being able to do a ritual like this, mainly I think because of a lot of misunderstandings that were inserted by specifically Islam as well as Zoroastrianism that came along and tried to take the essence of the Ahriman Oramazda duality, which is yin and yang. It's both in one, and tried to separate them, and then to diminish one and say, well, stability is better than change. That doesn't even make sense. That you both are necessary for the perpetuation of any kind of growth, as well as just the continuance of life needs to have both stability and change in their own seasons and cycles. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be calling upon the essence of change, and along with that, we're going to be calling on sensual, erotic, seductive, and hypnotic Pairika. The Pairika are much like the Dakini of the Vedic system. If you look at a lot of you can trace back a lot of the fairy and elf lore back to Persia, back to what is now Iran, and to the Pairika. The Pairika, as I talked to Nemo, who is going to be here hopefully in just a...
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
We happen to have someone from fairy tradition. Have you heard of this before?
Yes.
Okay.
Not Pairika, that word specifically, but that the erotic, sensual, all of that, the fairy tradition is very physical.
Yeah, very, very physical, and you know, I worked with the Dakini in the Vedic system, which is another, I guess you say, spiritual or astral race of beings who are all female, just as the Pairika are all female. And I asked Nemo, who's going to be here hopefully in an hour or so, as we're preparing for this, and he has extensive knowledge on ancient Persian sorcery. I said, well, will these Pairika respond to a male? Because I know the Dakini really have a hard time with that. And he goes, well, that's like asking if humans prefer men or women. Well, that depends on what human you're talking about. And he goes, yeah, and it depends on what Pairika you're talking about.
Well, the Fae, their definition of gender and sexuality is much different than ours. Sex is sex.
Right, and that's what he proposed as well, is that they are sexual, sensual creatures, and if they're attracted to you, they're attracted to you. If they're not, they're not. And it doesn't come down to anything that we can say this entire species prefers this specific. No, there's something more to that. And so, in order for us to do this, that we ourselves are going to have to seduce the Pairika into coming into the circle and swarming towards us and hopefully uniting with us. one thing I like about this ritual is that I am not going to be fully in control of it. That it's going to depend on them to decide whether or not they want to.
They're already here.
I take that as a good sign then.
Question. This is interesting.
Thank you.
So is it like when you say sexual energies or sex itself, is it in reference to union, in the union of yin yang, or the union of divine masculine? Or I mean, I'll throw the word divine out the window for the sake of this discussion. But the union of male and female. Are we talking about sexual union and balance, or strictly that erotic energy that, like you stated in your tradition,
Like
pushes
the
us to
60s.
extremes?
I think both, really. I mean, the union is, and I think always should be,
Is
the
that
goal
clear
of just
to
about
you?
anything.
Is-
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That union is going to be the ultimate goal. I think union would be the goal, and the path to that goal would be that sensuality. Even if you look at the Kundalini itself is a sexual energy. That
But the sirens lure the sailors to their death. So what
But
could you speak
death
to that
is,
a little
death
bit?
is initiation.
and they're dying in the waters of rebirth. I mean, hopefully.
Sexual energy is some of the strongest.
Now, are you close to finished your
Yeah.
remarks?
That
Let me ask you this. This is a very important question because I've been accused on the internet of having been attempting to dupe Wiccans into a deep satanic rite and all of these things.
Most of the stuff they say on the internet is
strange
true,
anon blogs. But anyway, what I have to ask you, it's quite important because there are those of us in the Golden Dawn who have taken oaths not to work evil magic. And so this raises, of course, an ethical question which needs to be addressed, especially for Golden Dawn practitioners, which has to do with the intention of the ritual. Now, and the Wiccans also have a part of their creed having to be with harm none. So is there, in your point of view, any conflict between these oaths with the specific intention or nature of this ritual?
No.
And why or why not?
No, thank you. Yeah, no, for sure. The intention of this ritual, and actually this is something that Nemo and I discussed this morning. Right as soon as I woke up, I had text messages from him waiting for me to give him a call, and so I did, and we actually talked specifically about this ritual and specifically how the anybody who is watching it is going to be able to participate or not participate or whatever, and the intentionality, whether or not this is going to be an explosion at ground zero that is going to therefore affect everything or not, and how we framed it and the way that we've written this ritual and the way that we're going to perform this ritual is for us, Nemo and I, inside the circle, to presence these Pyreka, these Fae, and to have whatever degree of union that they choose to accept and have with us. That's it's going to be a personal experience for us, and we will make the invitation for anybody out there who's observing to put their own intention into having a similar union, and they're welcome to or welcome not to.
You cannot force the Fae into a union. If you think you can, think again.
Yes.
One thing that I do want to emphasize, and if someone appears here to attend the ritual or someone comes on the property who wasn't on the property before, I want to emphasize that voyeurism is participation. If you do not want to participate in this rite, then do not even look at it. Completely remove yourself from the situation. Voyeurism is participation. Just as you looking at a particle will change it on a quantum level, you simply witnessing this ritual, it will change you. If that is not what you want, please do not be witness to this ritual. Thank you.
And I think you answered David's question. The purpose of the ritual is to create change, correct?
Yes, and to create change in this particular case within myself. I'm at this point. My focus in this ritual is myself. I'm being very selfish.
Now, as in the previous discussions with you, though, I guess that was the other ritual that you had intended, but there was an intention to overcome blockages to our spiritual growth. Now, is that intention also compatible with this ritual?
You know, I think I might like to. I would like to think that would be the intention of just about all of my rituals, would be to overcome any obstacles to my spiritual growth. With this ritual in particular, it will be the intention of it, and for me, the novelty of this ritual will be to make first contact with a race of beings that I've never met before. And that in itself is well worth the journey for me. These Pyrrhica are known, they were called in the Avestas and in a lot of the Zoroastrian as well as Islamic lore, they were considered to be demonic, much as the ancient gods of Mesopotamia are now considered by Judeo-Christianity to be demonic. But they're no more demonic than the fairy because they indeed are one and the same as far as everything I can see. And I think there's a high priestess here that might agree with me on this point. So whether or not the Fae
I've got lots of things I could throw into this that would shake everyone up, but I'll keep my mouth shut at this point.
When you say to bring about change, is there like a specific type or like specific change that this ritual is intended to do, or is this, you know what I mean?
You know, I guess to clarify, my objective with this is that no, I don't have an end result that I'm going for. The journey is the end result in this case. I'm an explorer. I'm a spiritual, psychological, and most often a physical explorer. And so in the spirit of exploration, I really want to get to know the Pyrrhica.
So we don't really know what's going to change or what could change in us or in, as you said, on multiple levels.
I think, as was pointed out, that on one hand, you do have that your observation of the thing will, as soon as you observe it, not only will you change it, but it will change you. But that also will go along with your intention. That if you're looking for an electron to be a wave, it's a wave. If you're expecting it to be a particle, it's a particle. And so if you set your intention while you're observing, that you can most definitely harvest from it something very specific and unique to you. If you set no intention, then it's going to be an exploration as is what I'm doing. I'm not going to set an intention for something that I want to change. I want to make contact, and I really hope that happens.
Can I ask, won't the fairies guide you? Like if you actually do meet the fairies, will they guide you to what you should be seeing?
No, you must ask the questions in order to progress. Without asking the questions as to what is it that they have to teach you, you cannot know.
I found that a lot in my own evocations as well. That I've called up. I mean, any range of types of spirits, and I said, so what do you got to tell me? And so, well, what do you want to know? Yes. That what do you want to know is very important, or what do you want to do with this, or all of that. So
look at fairy tales. What does the hero of the fairy tale always do when they meet entities along the road? What do they always do? They ask questions.
Now, another question. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time with us today and coming here and presenting for us. And it's highly unusual that we have pagans of the left-hand path and pagans of the right-hand path and Christians, right-hand path magicians all sitting in the same room and discussing things and comparing the way that we work, and might not necessarily agree with everything that all of your methods or your entire philosophy, but I certainly support your right to have it and to be a part of the pagan community in having divergent beliefs than those of myself or other pagans or fae or those who work with the fairies. It's quite a unique opportunity for us to compare notes and look at the different ways and see what it is that we don't like about the way each other works, or those sort of things. Like, for example, it was very clear when you began to speak of the order of nine angles that there are things about the way that they work that I absolutely disagree with. But at the same time, I would like to hear your opinion. What do you consider to be, from your point of view, the difference between the right-hand path and the left-hand path?
Whew, okay, so
This is why I came.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a provocative question, I know.
That's a good question.
no, this is excellent, and really the
It's such a unique opportunity, it has to be asked.
oh no, I think and I would prefer that this become a multiple dialogue for anybody that would like to join in on this conversation. Most definitely, as far as I see it. The right-hand path seeks to dissolve the individual into the whole. Whereas the left-hand path seeks to I think, create oneself as being a singularity of one's own existence.
This is where you're mistaken, and I'm glad to correct this for you. I really am, because this is something that I have been working very hard to correct, this misimpression in the magical community now for over a year. This business of dissolving into the all is mysticism. It's not magic. The right-hand path of magic also has the goal, the same goal of uniting with the one, which is all things, yet retaining individuality. It's not a dissolution of individuality, but it's a retention of individuality, and it is also becoming a living God in that sense. So the goal, it seems to me, the way you're describing it, is the same. Because as a right-hand path magician, I'm a magician. I'm not a mystic.
But wait a minute, David. Wait a minute. Does this mean that we can't fight anymore?
Well,
does the war have to stop here and now then, and we all have to just realize that we're all working towards the same thing?
Saying that he's said a few times on the internet, as far as when you're talking about mysticism and magic, and where the mystic's path is to like become passive and, like you said, like, through prayer and meditation and like bring God to himself, whereas the magician, how did you put it? Conquers the ramparts of heaven.
Right, whereas the magician conquers the ramparts of heaven. We are conquerors in the sense that we climb by our own efforts. And there is a distinction, though, but I want to clarify. What the distinction that you made is actually the distinction between magic and mysticism. But it seems to me that the goal, as you explain it, I don't see a whole lot of difference between the goal of the right-hand path of magic and the goal of the left-hand path of magic, in the sense that, except for that, in our earlier conversations, you were talking more about its embodying being divine here and now on the physical level, whereas in the Hermetic tradition we talk more about the cultivation of the solar body of light in order to enter into eternal divinity inside the light end of the universe, inside the stellar end of the universe, where time ceases to exist. But at the same time, whereas the goal may be very similar, we do have very different methodologies. We do this on the right-hand path by cultivating our energetic nature, by transmuting the lead of our physical bodies into the gold of our energetic nature.
And that alchemical, that personal transfiguration, that alchemical process, is just as evident in the practices and the outcomes of the left-hand path as well. Here's the maybe the big difference between them. Would be, I think, the restrictions that you would place on yourself. The right-hand path has more rules. They have more of, these are not allowed, you shouldn't use your power for this. That's not left up so much to individual interpretation, but is that the magical ethics, as you said earlier, are thought on the right-hand path to be pretty absolute. That there are just certain things you don't do, and for magic, with magic, because of magic. But on the left-hand path, those restrictions are completely removed. That it is a purely existential, relativistic approach, and so I think that freedom of action is really one of the biggest defining differences between the two. That there's a definite antinomianism, there's a definite individualized approach and ethics that would come more with the left-hand path. Now, here's what I'm wondering with that.
Although we seem to have similar magical ethics from the things that we've described. I mean, both of us can agree that human sacrifice is not a good thing.
Right, and I think that just from spending a little bit of time with you already, that you probably value some of the same things I value as far as family, community, the connections you have with other people, improving what we have here. That our methodologies are very similar. Our goals and aims are very similar, and our ethical systems that we've developed are pretty similar.
Right, come in.
There's different methodologies.
Different methodologies, and yeah, I mean, and this is the issue that I think we're confronting as not just individuals here, but as a magical collective of I think the majority of people in the world of occultism and magic and practical spirituality are asking this question more and more about what's the difference between the two, and I think most people are realizing there is no difference, and that once again that this is, I think, largely that there's a conspiracy that's been underfoot for quite some time to make us believe that we're different, and that's been propagated by government and religion forever to say, well, here's the in-group and here's the out-group, and if you're part of the in-group, you're this color or you're this sexuality, you fit into these parameters, and then you're part of the in-group and we support you, and if not, then you're an enemy. And what this does is this keeps people very, very distracted. That as long as we're focusing on the differences, we're not looking at the similarities. I think today has been an excellent opportunity to look at the similarities, and I think that we see that there are a whole lot of them. And so when it comes down to the hard line, what's the difference between the left and the right-hand path? I don't think there is.
I think maybe there is, and one of the things that comes to mind right now is that again, I think maybe one way to approach this, a difference that I see, is that is once again from a psychological perspective, from a Jungian perspective, and as limiting as that is in terms of certain things in the Hermetic tradition, at other times I find a Jungian perspective in terms of personal development and understanding larger systems can be a very, very important one and a very, very valid one. Red, come here. Red.
Red, come here.
Can someone hold him, please? Okay, what I'm pointing out is that I think that in Jung's theory of archetypes, an archetype is an energy which becomes separated from consciousness, becomes unconscious, can also be collective, but there are also two aspects to an archetype. There's an imago aspect, an image aspect, a luminous aspect, and there's also a dark chthonic aspect, which the light aspect has more to do with ideals, goals, ideations, what we would like to become more like. And then there's this other repressed chthonic instinctual aspect, which is the part which is more socially unacceptable, yet is also there. And it seems to me that although these are two aspects of the same archetype, the imago aspect and the chthonic aspect, the instinctual aspect, that it's still two aspects of the same archetype, whereas we on the right-hand path, we tend to achieve development by awakening the luminous imago aspect in our spheres of sensation, in our energetic bodies, where it sounds like, if I've understood you correctly today, that on the left-hand path you achieve this sort of development through working with these dark chthonic forces of the archetypes.
Yeah, I mean that's an excellent clarification, because that's exactly, I think that does ring pretty true, because the black magician most definitely seeks after the things that are forbidden, that are forbidden by society, by religion, by whatever. If you say no, that's what the black magician wants to do. And it's not that I don't think that the desire to do the forbidden is unique to the black magician. I think the desire is there. I think that the follower, the walker of the left-hand path, just doesn't restrict himself from doing so, and thereby experiences some amazing things that are, for some reason or another, off limits. I mean, even if you look at the tantras, that the tantras are really pretty left-hand path when you get into them, because they are dealing with the forbidden. That you have the 5 restrictions of the Vedic system, and we got alcohol, certain meats, sex, sexual promiscuity outside of whatever the current society decides is okay, and I can't remember the other 2 now, but you, yes, exactly. You've got the 5 M's, and that through tantric ritual you use these and utilize them, and thereby, and this is the really the parable of being able to convert poison into nectar within your own body, is that you're taking in these things that would otherwise be destructive, and through the ritual you're transmuting them. As you're transmuting, if you look at the operation of a Brahmalan, the operation is not concluded by the knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. That's not the conclusion. The conclusion is, after you've reached that point of binding the demons, that you're calling them up and evoking them and subjugating them. As you're subjugating them, what you're actually doing is you're subjugating yourself. You're taking the parts of yourself that are out of control, those chthonic parts of yourself, and bringing them into conscious awareness through the evocation, and then conscious control through the subjugation. Not saying that these spirits are only aspects of our consciousness and psyche, but at the same time, our consciousness is omnipresent, and so therefore there is nothing in existence that's outside of that.
This sounds like a good note to end on, although I want to once again, because I just see the sensationalist headlines on the Anon blogs already, and so I'm doing my due diligence by asking these things. Okay, we've clarified intention. Many people define evil in terms of the intention of the magician. That which is intended to harm is evil. That which is intended to do good or altruism is not evil. We've clarified that the ritual that you intend to do satisfies that consideration. The nature of the forces, there are some people who consider the nature of the forces to be determinant of whether or not a working is evil. Well, you, as you have explained, that these forces are considered demonic in their lore, but there's other lore that appears where they might not be.
Yeah, in their lore, and their lore would be pre-Zoroastrianism, which came before even Islam. They were considered to be, I mean, and once again, to ask about, are these things evil? Are humans evil? Well, that depends on the humans you're talking about. That these things are not as cut and dry as all of them are this, but they are. The Pyrrhica you could see as being almost the incarnation of independence. That they are they're not going to bow before the dark or the Lord of Light. That they are going to 100% do what they want to do, and that idea is very evil to religions and systems that demand obedience to their leaders and their ideology. Independence is an extraordinarily satanic concept. And so, on one hand, you could have the sensationalists that they go, he's calling upon the name of Ahriman, which definitely is going to be one of the names that we're going to be calling, not because we're evoking Ahriman as the Lord of Darkness to cause destruction, but because we're wanting to change ourselves. We're wanting to perform that alchemy and apply heat to ourselves to do so. Now, you could have that end of it. On the other end of it, I can see the headlines saying, E.A.Koetting turns to fey-craft and is now worshiping the fairies, and that'll be equally, bad for me as just about anything else that could be written. So, so it could.
That's just what happens from invoking these faith.
It's change.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that that so much of all of this does come down to how the individual is observing, and
Wouldn't having
Well,
an
with this said,
intention
with this,
Well-
with this said, I want to make it very clear that no one is obliged to attend this ritual. No one is obliged even to observe this ritual. Those who want to are welcome to do so. We're going to do it off of the property, and I'm not even certain that I'm going. So,
well, and I'll say now, and I'll repeat this immediately before the ceremony begins, that if you are observing, you definitely ought to set an intention for yourself. If that intention is to like was pointed out, if you don't ask a question, you're not going to get an answer. And so, come into it with, if you want to have that contact with the Pairika, set that intention. If you want them to act in a way in your life or in your consciousness, set that intention and hold that intention throughout your observation, and that's what you're going to manifest. There are those, most definitely, who set their intention on dissolving what could otherwise be unions, and so they're going to find that in this ritual. Just as those who are setting the intention for union are going to find that in this ritual as well.
May I voice an observation about the potential for the ritual?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had mentioned the Dakini, and you had also mentioned that they're very sexual beings, these Pairika, and going to the Wilhelm Reich work of armoring, where a lot of times in the work of Wilhelm Reich, for those who don't know, psychological problems would often manifest as physical tensions. And in his basic practice was to release top down and the pelvis last, because he found that a good surge of energy would come from this. And so, because of the nature and the knowledge that these beings may have they may have an understanding of the human dynamic at a more fundamental or background way. So, if I'm personally, if I attend, probably going to invite the idea of enhancing my understanding and wisdoms of letting these more deep or pelvic energies manifest through my life in a radiant and healthy way, helping to clear blockages that may otherwise be impeding the healthy expression of this stuff.
right.
Excellent. No, that's perfect.
Well, thank you very much for coming, everyone.
Thank you.